Welcome to Act Out. I'm Eleanor Goldfield, and this is your tipping point. Not of stupid. Now, some of that poetic rant you just heard was inspired by Charles R. Pierce's book, Idiot America, How Stupidity Became a Virtue in the Land of the Free. In the book, Pierce opens with a story about a museum, an anti-evolution museum that has lifelike statues of dinosaurs wearing saddles. Yeah, saddles, because that's how dinosaurs could perform ranch duties or indeed compete in races. And more importantly, this is the only way that evangelical nutbags can explain dinosaur fossils. In other words, science, history, facts, and common sense can't hold a candle to an image of a fucking triceratops wearing a saddle, or the story of a guy herding every species of animal, including 2 dinosaurs, onto a wooden boat, neglecting the obvious point that all of the evil floating and swimming animals got a free pass. That's an anglerfish, by the way. Probably a nice guy. But anglers and saddle dinosaurs aside, why am I even bringing this up right now? Let me share with you this week's quote of the day. The rise of Idiot America today reflects, for profit mainly, but also and more cynically, for political advantage and in the pursuit of power, the breakdown of the consensus that the pursuit of knowledge is good. We have become a culture that boldly supports stupid and is increasingly skeptical of truth, facts, and information. And it's not just in obvious moments as the man's best friend, the dinosaur museum. It's in moments like climate change debates, where we actually allow some fuckstick, who is one miracle away from thinking the earth is flat and that he's a prophet, to proudly say that climate change isn't real and science is for dummies. It's in moments where we allow abstinence to be taught in schools, while simultaneously taking out pieces of our own history, like the separation of church and state, or what are they called? Native Americans. Clearly, Jesus comes first. And it's in moments where a march to end student debt is met with the most ironically ignorant display of why education is so fucking important in the first place. Last Thursday, students across the country came together for the Million Student March. A march protesting tuition rates and the ever-growing bubble of insurmountable student debt, calling for student debt forgiveness and free public college. The concept is pretty simple. Education is a right. And I would actually even go further and say that education is mandatory, particularly if you want to have a populace that knows its ass from its elbow well enough to choose its own government, which is, the foundation of our country. But as Pierce noted, knowledge isn't just not a right anymore. It's not cool. It's not good. Whether that manifests itself in the privatization of elementary schools or the for-profit secondary education machine, the idea is make more money, dumb them down. And this is no conspiracy theory, there's brain suckers in your water segment. This is history. The whitewash thing that you learn in some schools. In fact, a lot of colleges used to be free. Take the entire UC system, for example. Yeah, that's including schools like Berkeley and UCLA. Those used to be entirely free for residents, and non-residents paid about up to $300 a year. Changes to this system began in the early 60s and only escalated with fucksticks like Reagan, who were afraid of the power of an engaged, educated student body. But let's jump academic subjects here and throw in some straight-up math. The federal government spends $80 billion a year on incarceration and throws about $69 billion at college education. That, in and of itself, is fucking disgusting. But now, riddle me this. If the overall cost of tuition at public colleges came in at about $62.6 billion in 2012, 69 minus 62.6, carry the 1. Well, you would even have some money left over if you just made all of public colleges free. Moreover, you'd cut that $100 billion that the federal government spends on student loans that in a lot of cases aren't paid back. FYI, student debt is now at a nice plump $1.2 trillion. So we spend more to make colleges not free than we'd spend just by making them free, so why isn't college free? Well, maybe because in the cuts to college funding, math classes must have been hit too. Here's one problem. Some of that $69 billion goes to tax breaks, but as usual, not for the students who really need it. Another problem, a lot of that money goes to for-profit colleges, like University of Phoenix, where an education might actually include a saddle dinosaur. A full 86% of all funding for for-profit schools comes from federal money. and 22.7% of that money goes to marketing, advertising, and recruitment, compared to 17.2% that's actually spent on fucking educating students. It's really no wonder that more than half of students enrolled in for-profit colleges withdrew within 2 years of enrolling. Money well spent, America. Money well spent. Meanwhile, for-profit schools boast the highest paid CEOs, with the average collegiate fat cat making $7.3 million a year. It's okay, so that's a lot of math. A lot of utterly stupid and wasteful math. Math that crept up on us as the rise to American idiocy primed for its spotlight. But before our fear of knowledge turned into accolades for the crackpot insane, before our apathy turned into our own self-destruction, this shit worked. And it can work again. And it should work again. I could spend the next hour simply going through some of the vehemently stupid million-student march attacks that I saw on Twitter. But really all I can say is that I'm sorry. I really am sorry that you're so gullible that when a rich man tells you that college is like a luxury car, you believe him. I'm so sorry that you don't see the sad irony of attacking a movement pushing for the education of our country while misspelling your own damn comment. I am so sorry that you weren't educated, that the ones with saddled dinosaurs got to you before a good education could. I'm so sorry that the only thing that could pull you from this bog of bigotry and idiocy is the very thing that you can't get to because you, like me and so many others, can't afford it. And that is not okay. And education is a luxury just as much as healthcare is, as in it shouldn't be. As in it doesn't need to be. The numbers are right there, the facts are right there. We spend more money on keeping the rich rich and each other dumb than we would need to spend on educating everyone. Clothing, feeding, and fucking buying everyone a balloon just to celebrate the fact that we know math again. Stop spilling stupid on each other and join the fight for education as a right. Check out the Million Student March Facebook page, where you can find plenty of coverage from last week, plus a lot of similar pages to peruse. Also, if you're the morbid curiosity type, check out #MillionStudentMarch on Twitter, and maybe grab a stress ball.